This is every single series I am in the middle of, and in case you're wondering how many this is exactly, let me give you a little recap. On episode 1 of the Finisher series, I started out my journey with exactly 58 ongoing series. Since then, I have finished 4 book series, which brought it down to 54, but then adjustments needed to be made, new series needed to be added, and this is how we're looking now. 58 DNF'd series, 9 I am still thinking of DNFing, and 14 series I am caught up with. I still cannot believe it myself. As it stands, I still have 55 book series to finish, and the hope for today's video is that I can get that number down to at least 50. So buckle up, girlfriend, because the journey is just beginning. Welcome to the first series we are finishing in this video, friends, The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the third and final installment in the original trilogy, The Final Gambit. Now, I've been debating for a while, especially as the newest 2 books have come out in this universe. We have got The Brothers Hawthorne and The Grandest Game. If I want to read those or not, to my understanding, they are like a completely separate series now, where it's a deviation from the original trilogy. I don't think I'm going to be reading those. I think that this is going to be my last hooray with these characters, and I'm gonna call it good because I don't think the story needs anything more than these 3 books, and so I think this is going to be my last stand with the series. But as it stands, as I have set the mood and ambiance with my good little Dark Academia playlist and throwing myself and immersing myself back into this world of riddles and puzzles and games and old money and really rich aesthetics and a lot of tension and a lot of lies and deceit, I am really enjoying my time so far. 100 pages into this book, I have this little bookmark. It's a check. I thought it would be the most perfect thing to use with my read of The Final Gambit. And in case you're not familiar with the series, we overall follow our main character Avery, who is incredibly smart and ambitious and very driven. However, she sort of has to tame all of those things, given the fact that at the start of the trilogy, she finds herself not really having the best time financially. And at the start of the series, we see a seemingly insane situation presented to her, where one of the world's biggest billionaires, Tobias Hawthorne, has essentially signed off his entire inheritance to her name. She has never seen this man, has never met him. She doesn't know anything about him or his family. And although his entire family, his grandsons, his kids, they were all very much vying for his fortune and all the assets he'd leave behind when he did pass, Avery is the person that ends up inheriting this whole thing, leaving everybody extremely confounded as to why this is happening in the first place. However, she finds herself playing a game much bigger than she thinks, because it's not just getting this inheritance, but it's almost like she has to earn it. She has to figure out a set of puzzles and games and riddles that Tobias Hawthorne left behind, and she finds herself racing against time and against his family in order to figure out exactly why her, why now, and why this situation has come up to begin with. The series is rich with different characters. We see Avery's legal team, having inherited so much money. She now has a team of people rallying behind her to kind of prepare her for her 18th birthday, when she will inherit the full sum of his money and his assets. We see her security team with Oren, who is one of the prominently displayed characters in the series, the person who is her head of security and really helps her figure out the day-to-day machinations of this whole thing. We see her interact with all of the Hawthorne grandsons, Sander, Nash, Grayson, and Jameson, 2 of those which she finds herself in a love triangle with. We see her with her sister Libby. We also see her with her friend Max, as well as with this extended cast of characters that she ends up meeting through inheriting all this money and integrating herself into this family. And the story has progressively gotten more interesting and complex. At the start of book 1, you really see an Avery who again is quite confused as to why she is going through this, and she is going through a huge adjustment period with PR training and makeovers and figuring out how she wants to present herself to the world, whilst also not wanting to do so because this is not something that she ever would have signed up for. In book 2, we see a lot of the reveal reveals about exactly why Tobias Hawthorne did leave his inheritance to her name, and we see a lot of her past and all of these connections be revealed in such intricate ways that I don't think I could have ever put together, honestly, but they do make sense. I think Jennifer Lynn Barnes is really good at dropping little hints here and there to things that maybe you won't think will contribute to the story later down the line or that they'll be important, but they end up being so. And so I love that it's a trilogy where you really do have to pay attention to the small little details if you ever do at any point want to figure out exactly where it's all heading. And in this third book so far, we are seeing a lot of those unresolved issues or information that we got in book 2 show up in ways that I also was not expecting as part of the conflict. However, I think it's making for a really juicy, intense story, not only in the love triangle aspect between Avery, Grayson, and Jameson, but also in the front of her receiving this inheritance and there being a lot more players than she ever anticipated. I think it's also really cool to see how, as she nears the day of receiving everything, how everything kind of starts crumbling. The media starts going on this frenzy of wanting to attack her, and people kickstarting smear campaigns, as well as business competitors really rallying up the troops to essentially bring down the empire that she is about to inherit. It's kind of giving Succession in ways, but make it YA, and I think it's all very, very cool and fascinating. I love the Knives Out sort of tone to this, where you really feel like you have to solve this massive puzzle as you are reading. I think it is so very engaging. It reads so fast and it's so engaging, I think, because you are trying to figure all of these things out alongside the characters. So far I'm having a good time. I do kind of wish that I had the memory of book 2 clear in my head, because I did read book 2 last year, and I kind of wish that I wouldn't have waited so long to read this third book, because it is, I think, in the beginning a little bit confusing to kind of connect a lot of the dots that are being presented at the beginning of the story with what happened in book 2, and I wish it was more present. However, I will say the book does do quite a good job at reminding you of all of those really important bits of information when you do need the reminders. They don't happen all the time with all of the information and all of the things that are coming up in the story, but it does do so for the bits that are most important, which I definitely appreciate. And I think the more I am reading, the more my brain is kind of triggering those memories of exactly what happened in book 2. So honestly, not all hope is lost in terms of me remembering all of those details, but overall, I just think I really like these characters and I love the way that they interact with each other. And I love how willing everybody is to play this game and to try and find these answers. Everybody is so capable and smart and good at solving all of these games. Particularly all of the Hawthorns have really been kind of indoctrinated in this way of thinking, where they've had to earn things or really prepare for the future playing games. It's how Tobias Hawthorne essentially raised all of them, and I think it's quite curious to see how that has conditioned a lot of these characters to not be so forthright with information, or even get to the point of struggling to really be vulnerable and vocalizing their feelings and where they're at, because it's definitely not something that they're used to. I think that aspect of it has been super fascinating all throughout the trilogy, and also seeing where Avery is at in this third book, where it seems like she has gotten more comfortable with the notion of what she has inherited and what her role in this whole thing needs to be, and seeing her be so in charge at times in this installment, in talking to the security team, talking to the legal team. I definitely think there are still things that she does not want to face, doesn't want to accept, and she doesn't want to look at, because it feels almost too real to accept that this is her life now. But I think it'll be inevitable for her to deal with these things later on, so I'm curious to see how all of that is going to pan out. But so far, 100 pages in, I think we are off to a really good start. I am about to start chapter 25. I also really appreciate that the chapters for this are really short. I'm not going to finish it in a sitting because it is already very late, but I just thought I'd come on here and give you a 100-page update, because so far, I'd say we are off to a good start. It's been a very chronically ill day for yours truly, so if I sound extra nasally, I have not had a good time today. My jaw has been kind of hurting on and off, my teeth are super sensitive, and my nose in turn is suffering, and it's all on the right side of my face. Temporomandibular disorders and bruxism are truly no joke, so I've just been chilling, reading, and taking it slow today. I took my medication, so shouldn't be so bad now, but I am exactly 60 pages away from finishing the final Gambit, and I had to force myself to come on here and update you guys before I actually did sit down to finish this book, because I really want to see how the entire trilogy wraps up, and I'm like eager to get to the end and see how Jennifer Lynn Barnes manages to wrap this one up. I have to say, ever since I gave you that last update at the 100-page mark, there are certain things that have solidified themselves in my eyes. I really love the angst in this trilogy when it comes to the love triangle between Jameson, Grayson, and Avery. I think because all of them are intellectual equals and they're all sort of in this rivalry to figure out who will find the answers to these riddles first, and obviously the tension surrounding the facts that they didn't get the inheritance but she did. I think it's so well executed, and it really comes to a head quite nicely in this installment. I really love both of the brothers' doubts when it comes to Avery and her making her final decision on who she wants to be with. Does she want to be with Jameson? Does she want to be with Grayson? And it definitely is giving like the Vampire Diaries. One of the brothers always questions whether it's him or if it's the other one, because people in the past have chosen Grayson, whilst Grayson is trying to take the morally high ground because he doesn't want his brother to hurt. And it definitely is reminding me of Damon and Stefan in the Vampire Diaries, both in good and bad ways. And that's not to say that this love triangle isn't infuriating, because there are definitely moments where I'm like, okay, you're just being insecure, which is okay for these characters given the circumstances, but it definitely starts becoming frustrating when there are certain scenes that come up in the story that are sort of misplaced. They're having these very tense conversations about Avery's final choice on who she'll be with in the strangest of moments and places, which I don't often love, but the questioning itself I like. I just don't like how it often shows up in this last book. And it's also extra infuriating because if you've read this, then you know Eve's character. I hate this girl like so much with every single fiber of my being, and the fact that not everybody in this book feels the same is just crazy, because every time she's on page I just want to screech my little heart out because she is so deeply unlikable. It is genuinely crazy. And so there have been plenty of moments in this book where I have felt anger towards these characters, because for people that also claim and visibly are very capable, they're often making these stubborn choices that make absolutely no sense to me as the reader, and I just want to grab all of them and just screech out into the ether sometimes. But that's not to say that it isn't good. It definitely makes for a very interesting narrative, and I can also very much appreciate how this, in comparison to The Naturals, which is her other YA mystery thriller series, I can definitely appreciate how in this one it's a lot less campy, and all of the twists and turns and everything really comes together in a way that makes sense and isn't overblown. And I think that's what I like about this trilogy so much, is that everything has got a place to be and everything has a reasoning to happen in the story. It's not just, aha, Scooby-Doo villain reveal, which I really don't like in thrillers and mysteries. So I really like that, although a lot of the things that are happening and a lot of the reveals that are coming up in this installment are very, very messed up, it really does make sense given the facts that these characters, most of the cast, are part of a billionaire family who will do anything to keep not only their reputations intact, that will also do everything in their power to make sure that anything that can potentially hinder their wealth, their careers, their futures remains as hidden as possible. And again, while a lot of that is really messed up, I really do like the way that Jennifer Lynn Barnes brings about the reveals and really navigates it all. There was this one moment in it was between chapter 70 and 74, I'm about to start chapter 74, that had me absolutely gagged, because I, as many people did when they were reading this trilogy, or will continue to do so as people continue to pick it up in the future, was wondering the entire time why the heck Tobias Hawthorne had actually picked out Avery. It's finally revealed in this book, and it's every bit as messed up as you'd expect it to be, and also kind of hopeful. It's just so wild but so good, and I am glad that we finally got the answer to it all in this particular installment. So that I am very much appreciating, and to see Avery realize that it's not just her getting this fortune, this inheritance, this business just for the sake of it, and that it'll all be smooth after she does take over. There's a lot to this. There are competitors and people who will like to see you fall and fail, and people who would like your empire and your business shatter to the damn floor, and her coming to a head with all these realizations has also been really cool to see, because this is a world that's entirely new to her, and you can tell how even if she's acclimated to parts of it here, it still is is very new to her and she still doesn't understand most of it. So let me dive into the last 60 pages because I really do want to finish this, and we'll chat once I am done because I can't wait too much, you know? Need to go back to the reading. First thing we have got to do, friends, is unblock this nose, because when I tell you, I literally cannot breathe through my right nostril. I wish I was kidding. Oh my god. Yeah! It burns. It's so bad. I can't even breathe. Anyways, all that to say, and while the nose unblocks so that I can properly breathe again, I finished The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which means that this series is done. And I'm low-key very sad about it because I had such a good time with this trilogy. It's so funny because I had already DNF'd this series and then I picked it back up. I re-fell in love with it. I continued on with it, and now we are here at the end. I'm not gonna lie, I do think the very end of the book kind of tempts me to want to read whatever follows for the brothers Hawthorne and the Grandest Game, because there is kind of a little tease in the very last page about the Grandest Game, the book, the installment in the, I guess, companion series. However, do I want to taint my memory of this series by reading standalones? I don't know that I do, because I experienced kind of a similar case with the Truly Devious series, where I had a lot of fun with the main trilogy, then I read the first standalone, and then I just lost interest as I went, and I don't know that I want to start out this companion series and put it in my ongoing series list, knowing full well that I may not have the intention to finish it out and see it to the very end as these books release, because I feel like I do risk it over time to lose interest. And so I think I'm capping it here, even though I do think it's a very fun storyline, seeing at the end how Avery plays the game in probably the best way she has yet was so cool. There was chess involved, and I love chess. It's literally one of my favorite things ever, and seeing it in media, whether it's in like a TV show as a competitive thing or seeing it in book format like Check and Mate or in The Final Gambit, I really love characters utilizing chess not only as a way to strategize as part of the plot, but also as like an actual game that again impacts the plot in some way, shape, or form. I love it, and this book did it so well towards the end. I will say though, I'm a Grayson girly through and through. I am so sorry for the Jameson lovers. I will say he was more tolerable in this book versus the other installment, and I didn't mind him nearly as much. I think the whole thing with the code word and wanting himself and Avery to be more honest than they have been in the past about their connection, I thought that was really good. It was probably one of my favorite parts of their dynamic in this one, and also how much of an instigator Jameson is, but also how protective he is of Avery. I think all of that was really good. But also Grayson, there's just something about like that tortured hero. I have to comply with the quota. I have to fulfill all of these expectations and all of these images that people have got of me because of the way that I was raised, and that butting into the middle of potentially having a relationship with Avery, but then wanting that to be the case, but then feuding with his brother. I generally just think that Grayson's storyline was one of my favorites, and if I ever did go into the next installment, it would more likely than not be because of Grayson, because he is just my favorite character, I think, in this whole thing. Like, yeah, Avery's great, but Grayson, though, he is the type of, I think, archetype in a story like this that I adore, and Jennifer Lynn Barnes gave it all to me, and I love this. So that said, if I had to give this book a rating, I feel like it'd be anywhere from like a 4 to a 4.5. I think just based on how fun this book was, I do want to give it a 4.5 because I just think that it's such a bingeable story. There's always something propelling you forward, and the negatives that I have with the book are so minuscule. I do think that there are parts of this that can be structured better. There are moments in which the characters are solving puzzles and trying to figure out these really crazy, tense, and often awful things that were left behind by Tobias Hawthorne, and and suddenly our characters are flirting or they're having these confessions of love and feelings that do not go along with what's happening in the scene, and tonally it's just off. So I do think that there are certain scenes that could have been broken up into two separate ones that definitely would have made even just the pacing of the story a little bit better. I think that the story overall, there's always something happening, which is not a bad thing, but I do think to its detriment, at times you don't get those like pockets of peace between the characters and for like specific units that I do believe would need a little bit of a break from everything. And while I do think that the not getting a break is realistic with the circumstances, I really do wish that maybe for some of the Jameson and Avery scenes specifically, we would have gotten them separate from solving any of these mysteries, because it's not often the case. We do get some of them structured like that for her and Grayson, which I do think is better. So I'd say that that's one of my gripes, as well as Jameson just always calling Avery Aries. I am probably the only human in this world that dislikes when he says Aries, but he just says it all the time. I feel like if he would drop that every once in a while when it's like fitting, that would be cool, but he rarely calls her by her name. It's actually a thing that the author makes sure to reinforce in this specific installment. When he does call her Avery, she's like, oh shit, he called me by my name. And I'm like, girl, I really wish that he would have another nickname for her, maybe occasionally throw in the Aries, but it genuinely grates on my nerves, I think, a lot. Again, my gripes were like so minuscule with this, and then just certain characters that annoyed the crap out of me in this one, like Elisa, like Eve, and also like Thea and Rebecca at times, but honestly, not enough for me to go, ooh, hated the book. And so, again, very small things that I think would enhance the story, but overall, I think I'm gonna go for a 4.5, because it really was a great time. It is a new day, my friends. I'm adjusting the light here a little bit because it's really, really dark. It's not even late. It is literally 3 p.m. and it's so dark because the rain is about to kick up, and quite strongly so. It has been thundering for like the better part of the last 30 minutes, so it literally is any time now before it properly starts raining. Got my emotional support water bottle filled up right here because, not gonna lie, I've done a very poor job at staying hydrated, and clearly I still sound congested. I woke up this morning and I was expecting to feel fully better after finishing the final Gambit last night and having some proper rest. That did not ensue. I mean, I did get proper rest, but I'm still feeling the effects of a flare-up. I did go to my maxillofacial this morning, however, and all is good. I did have to get my mouth guard fixed up though, because the wear down was insane. I had no more cushion for when I'm biting and clenching at night, so we had to fill her back up because otherwise I was very near to start actually, you know, chipping away at my teeth and actually causing damage on them. So the appointment came out at the exactly most perfect time. However, it is what's causing this little flare up at the moment, but my doctor did recommend to go get checked out with an ENT because I have never done it, and as of recent, whenever I've been flaring up, the first thing that is like the dead giveaway is my nose. And so I just want to make sure that everything's good on that end. If it's a separate issue, if it's related, allegedly it is. So more doctor's appointments to schedule out for September. However, I am about to start out with the second series of this vlog, and I was debating whether or not I wanted to include graphic novels and manga in this series, but I figured if I have got ongoing graphic novels and manga series that I just have 2 volumes left for, I do run the risk that if I just space it out too much, I'm not going to want to finish the series, which is not a bad thing, but I would like to see what's next, and I do have some that I'm going to finish out in this video because I think it's the perfect opportunity to do so. And so last month I read The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. I really loved it. It was super wholesome, super short too. And so, testing my luck here a little bit, I went on Libby to see if they had books 2 and 3 in that series so that I could potentially read them in this video and not let the series sit for too long. And they did! So I am about to sit down, and in this like super gloomy, cozy weather, I am going to read The Tea Dragon Festival and also The Tea Dragon Tapestry is the last one. Based on the cover and the very first panel in the graphic novel, it seems like we're going to be following a different character altogether. In the Tea Dragon Society, we followed Greta, and it seems like in this one, we'll be following Rin. I've got no idea. I don't know if Greta will make an appearance here again, or if it's just contained to the first book in the series. I'll probably just read this entirely, give you an update later, and then jump into book 3, read that completely, jump back on, give you guys an update, and then then move on to our third series of the video. I feel like that sounds good because often with graphic novels, there's not like a whole lot of updating to do as we go. Maybe some quips here and there, but not a whole lot. Let's get into this. I'm excited. This was super wholesome, and I feel like given the flare up and the weather, it just calls for something cozy too. Couple sneezes later, a blocked up nose still, my right eye wants to cry, I've got vapor rub all over my chest, and some time later I finished the Tea Dragon Festival. I have to be honest, there was a point in time where I genuinely thought I was reading the wrong volume or the wrong installment. I for a second thought that I was reading the third instead of the second, but I did get the right one. I did read them in the right order. I think I was mostly surprised at the fact that this installment followed different characters, and that's because it actually is a prequel to the Tea Dragon Society. There was a point where it became very clear because Hezekiel and Eric, which are two of the characters that we see prominently displayed in the Tea Dragon Society, are talking about wanting to establish a tea house just because of Hezekiel's passion for tea making and tea dragons and taking care of them, and them vocalizing their intent to do this, but them having to like save up and really plan for this dream for it to come to fruition. So it was so cute to see the origin story of even just the thought of what we see in book 1 in the series, and then following an entirely new set of characters I think was so exciting. I'm not gonna lie, I do think I enjoyed this more than I did book 1 in the series. I think because it is longer than the first book, it definitely lent itself for more fleshing out of the world and the characters and really understanding like where these people come from and what the magic system looks like, versus book 1 that at times I felt like it was very underdeveloped. Still had a good time. I still gave it 5 stars because it was very wholesome, but I do think book 2 does a much better job at explaining what this world looks like, and I really loved that. And in this one specifically, we follow our main character Rin, who is an aspiring chef. They really want to become an apprentice and work under one of the people in town, and they often go out into the forest to forage for ingredients and vegetables and things that they can use for their cooking, and consequently cook for the people that are most important in their life, in their town, and people that are in general very close to them. And I really love when graphic novels, I think because of the visuals, I think it's so cozy. I love it when they speak about how food unifies people, how it's a conduit for memories and feeling, and how it's healing and comforting. I think this graphic novel did it very, very well. And seeing Rin even discover their passion, their true passion and their true intent when it comes to food and foraging throughout the story was so very beautiful. But the story really kicks up when Rin is out foraging and they end up meeting, I think his name is Aiden, a dragon that has been sleeping for 80 years, and after meeting said dragon who has missed quite a few festivals without really intending so, they basically strike up this friendship that is very unexpected for Aiden specifically. I genuinely feel like I'm gonna sneeze any second now, so if I do, I'm so sorry. However, part of the journey in this installment is that Aiden also has to figure out what his purpose is now that he's awake and that he's been sleeping for so long, and what was tasked to him 80 years ago is something that, yes, he still can do, but there is a little bit of like a crisis internally over how will I do this, because like I was irresponsible and I've been gone for so long. And I really love how through Aiden we got to see so much world building in terms of the dragons and shape-shifting and how that's different from tea dragons, and how the tea dragons also come about, and how there are dragon clans around. I thought that the world building was so rich in this one and so good. I love also how towards the last third I think we got to some really good lessons. This installment had a really big emphasis on no matter how small you think something is and how much you'd like to disregard it because it seems so common, it's common for you because you're good at it. It doesn't mean that everybody's gifted at it, nor is everybody meant to be doing that thing, but because you can, you have to view it as something special, and I really loved that. I'm not gonna lie, it almost made me cry because I really wasn't expecting it, so I was pleasantly surprised at this volume. It was so good. I think in book 3, I keep calling them volumes, but they're like their own individual things, but I do think in the Tea Dragon Tapestry, which is the 3rd book, I think we flash back to present time, and we do get to see Greta and Minette and Hezekiel and Eric more prominently in the story, versus this one, which was very Aiden and Rin coded. So I'm gonna go downstairs and fetch a little treat that I got because it's raining and it's cozy and I'm reading about tea dragons. And so I got myself a little chai latte, not like a full-blown classic traditional tea. It still has tea in it though, and so the essence of it all, it still remains. So I got that in a little empanada, so I'm gonna go fetch that, and then we are going to start the tea dragon tapestry and finish out series number 2. It's so cute. Guess who forgot to update you on the tea dragon tapestry? It would be me! It is indeed a new day, friends, which is why I'm wearing different clothes, but I definitely did finish the tea dragon tapestry the day that I was crying over it, that you saw in the B-roll. Hello? I have been torn ever since on what to rate this particular installment in the tea dragon series. I think my favorite was book 2, I'm not even gonna lie, which was surprising because book 2 definitely took me by storm, took me by surprise, because we did follow an entirely different character. And while in the 3rd book, we flash forward again and we follow Greta, which is the girl that we follow in book 1. I liked book 3. I did cry with it. I think the message is beautiful in all of these graphic novels. However, I think the most beautiful one, at least to me, was the 2nd one. But yeah, in the 3rd book, we flash forward again and we follow Greta still in her found family with the Tea Dragon Society. So we still see Eric and Hezekiel, and we see Minette. We see a lot of backstory actually, and a lot of context for Minette and her character and where she comes from and her heritage and what she connects to, which I definitely appreciate because I think book 1 in that element was kind of underdeveloped. And so we see Greta still with all of these people, but we see her particularly in the context of wanting to be a blacksmith's apprentice and getting an opportunity for her to be one. And I love that this 3rd book really explores reconnecting with your passions and reconnecting to that one thing that made you happier above all else, that you find yourself kind of lost in this present timeline, and how sometimes it takes the right person with the right set of tools, with the right vision in order to make you re-fall in love with it, which is I think something that a lot of people can connect to across a variety of different jobs. I think for artists specifically, there's such a cyclic nature to art, and I find that artists are constantly going through this loop of loving their craft, pursuing it, making it their job instead of their hobby, and then falling out of love with it or burning out of it, and then having to go through an entire process to figure out where their passion comes from to begin with, redefine that, and then re-fall in love with it so that they can do it again. And I love how this specific book in the series really showcases that in such a beautiful way that was very unexpected, which is why at the end I was crying. I think this particular installment was full of opportunity and new beginnings, and it was so like final, but like so beautiful. I just really liked this. I think the series overall has a beautiful message. It is so very wholesome. The found family aspect in this is incredible, and also seeing the characters from book 2, which I didn't think would show up in book 3, show up again in the story. That in itself made me really emotional too. So, oh god, I don't know where I want to go with this. See, I feel like overall, the series as a whole, because it's so short, I feel like collectively, I would just want to give it a 5 star so that the series overall can be a 5 star, because it's pretty consistent all throughout the different books and volumes. So I think I'm gonna have to give this a 5 star too, because I think it wouldn't be fair to not, just because it's not my favorite, but book 1 also wasn't my favorite. They have that 5 star feeling, you know what I mean? Now, where I think we can go to next, just because I'm craving something cozy, still in the same vein of found family and companionship and all that good stuff that screams the rain season that I currently find myself in. I feel like the next thing I want to pick up is Bookshops and Bonedust. I wanted to start this last week and I wasn't able to because I got really sick. I present to you no longer feeling so ill, as you saw me at the start of this vlog. The cats are also tussling. I don't know what over and what for, but if you hear them in the background, they're doing their thing. And oh, my children! Anyways, all that to say, I wanted to start this last week, but I fell under, y'all. I can't even lie. And so it is a new week, we're gonna start Bookshops and Bonedust. I am going to potentially really love this. I really don't know how this compares to Legends and Lattes. I don't think I've seen a single person read this, at least in the circles that I watch on booktube. So I'm very curious to see what I'm gonna think about this prequel, if it'll live up to like that same coziness that book one had and the same sort of magic. So let's get into this. We're gonna start this together. I'm going to update you as I go, and we'll go from there. Friends, I come bearing updates on Bookshops and Bonedust. I am currently 140 pages in, about to start chapter 18. I have been listening to the audiobook, which if you guys watched my September TBR, then you'd know I got this as an audiobook pick. I wasn't initially going to listen to it, but the book got off to a somewhat rough start and it was really difficult for me to get into the story. I think at this point I have pinpointed why, but at the beginning I was kind of somewhat confused because I couldn't understand why I couldn't connect to this specific storyline the same way I did to Legends and Lattes, because that first book for me was perfect. I understood Viv's motivations as a character. I understood why she wanted to build this coffee shop and that everything was writing on it, how she built her found family and how they all helped her out in the end to build the coffee shop to what it was toward the end, her finding love and companionship and partnership. All of those things were so beautiful in that first book that I was fully expecting it to be, if not the same, then at least as similar as possible, but I do think the writing is missing something here that I will get into in a little bit, and I can't look past it. So Bookshops and Bonedust is a prequel to Legends and Lattes. So this happens prior to her building her coffee shop and meeting all the characters that we know and love from book one. However, in Bookshops and Bonedust, we follow Viv, our main character, same main character as the first book, as she gets into this battle alongside her crew to fight off this necromancer, and the battle goes terribly wrong. She gets very injured and she has to basically be left behind by her crew in this town called Merc so that she can slowly but surely heal the injury on her leg that was pretty fatal. And as Viv gets to this town, she figures quite quickly that sitting idly by whilst her crew goes out and goes on different expeditions and different adventures, still fighting off this necromancer that they did not manage to defeat, she really is struggling with this time off, sitting idly by doing nothing while that is happening. She really doesn't want to be in this town as she knows that there are bigger battles to fight, and very reluctantly throughout her time here as her healer comes and goes to make sure that she's doing well, she ends up befriending several people in the town. First, a baker extraordinaire called Mei Li, who is a dwarf, who she, I think at this point, will form somewhat of a romance with. I simply do not understand how that's going to happen on a physical level, and I don't want to find out, let me say that much. And then we have got Fern, who is a bookshop owner. This bookshop has been passed down to her by her father, and at the start of the book we see a bookshop that is very run down. It smells terribly. It has no order to it whatsoever. The books are just thrown everywhere with no care or order to it. There is absolutely no clientele, and Fern has seemingly just given up on this idea, on this dream that this bookshop will drive in people and that she'll be able to successfully keep it afloat. In fact, at the start of the book she mentions how they basically have only a couple weeks left before she has to close it down, and this is all despite the fact that Fern seems to be very gifted, supernaturally so to some people, at recommending the perfect book to every single person that walks into her bookshop. And alongside Fern we have got her griffin called Pot Roast, who is half dog, half owl, and honestly those two to me are the best characters so far in this story. I really have felt for Fern repeatedly as they are rebuilding this bookshop. Outside of these characters that we see very prominently in the story, we also have Viv befriending another orc who kind of keeps to himself, but he is a worker and he also helps out with the rebuilding of the bookshop. We also see Viv meet this wannabe mercenary called Galina, which really sends me for a loop because it's spelled G-A-L-L-I-N-A, as in gallina in Spanish, as in chicken, hen, and I can't really look past it because she is anything but a hen. She is actually a goblin. However, However, what I think I'm struggling with in this installment is the stakes. Although it is cozy fantasy, I need to understand why Viv cares, because although she is just lying around doing nothing and she's seemingly doing this out of boredom, I need to understand, or I'd like to understand, why she cares so much about helping out Fern rebuild her bookshop and help out the people around town. I understand the not sitting idly by and the sitting down doing nothing. However, I'm really struggling to believe that Viv would go through all this length to help out Fern just because she's bored. Like, she's actually putting in her own money, getting furniture, helping her rip up carpet, helping her rebuild this business. And I can't imagine that it's because she's recently fallen in love with reading, because at the start of the book, we see Viv get a book from Fern, and she, as an avid non-reader, doesn't think that she's going to end up enjoying it. And it turns out that she is more of a reader than she initially thought. Now she's fully getting into stories and really enjoying the process. And while all that's fine and well, for somebody who doesn't know these people, is just meeting them, and all this kindness is very new to Viv, I cannot seem to understand why exactly she's doing all this to begin with. On top of that, the stakes that are in the book seem to show up in the form of this hooded stranger that is seemingly connected to the necromancer that Viv and Rackham's ravens fought at the start of the book, and it's just not really delivering the way that I think Legends and Lattes delivered. I'm not emotionally connected to any of these characters, despite really enjoying Fern and Pot Roast. I think they are my favorite characters in the story. I think that I definitely feel for Fern sometimes, as somebody who didn't even realize that she had given up on the bookshop by the time that Viv points it out, and her being very frustrated at the fact that she didn't try hard enough. I think those are all things that are all well and dandy. I think especially on the emotional part, I think it's the only part emotionally that is delivering. But outside of that, I don't understand Viv's motivations. I'm really not caring for the story overall because it's not driving that emotional punch that I think it should. And the characters are all just okay. Like, it's subpar in comparison to Legends and Lattes. And it saddens me that this book is falling short because the first book was so good. I would not want to DNF this one. Though I think with the audiobook I won't. But I'm so sad that it's not giving the way that book one gave. It is a rainy, cozy day, and I just finished Bookshops and Bonedust, and I don't know what I'm going to rate this. I think the ending's making me a little bit torn. Everybody told me record yourself reacting to the ending because it'll make you cry, and it made me very emotional. I love that the epilogue takes place after the event of Legends and Lattes, and it sort of interconnects a bit with Bookshops and Bonedust, and that we see the possibility for maybe a second book in the series, which I do think would be so interesting to see the characters, or at least Fern, the little ratkin in this book, intersect with the characters in Legends and Lattes, and potentially even see Thimble and Fern interact, be together, and then obviously seeing Tandri and Viv and all the rest of the cast of characters I think would be super fun and interesting, because I do think that what made me fall in love with Legends and Lattes primarily was not only the cozy aspect of like the coffee shop and the love for the establishment and learning about all of the customers, you know, stories and lives. I think it really was the characters. I think Tandri and Viv finding that tender, sweet love that they did and that companionship that slowly developed throughout the story was so gorgeous. And then the found family element, like, it was so easy to connect to for me. Whereas in this one, I kind of went back and forth between, oh, that's cute, oh, I like that, oh, I see the connection there, oh, I see the chemistry there, and then moments where I did not feel any of that. And I feel like overall what encompasses my feeling reading this book is just indifference. I did think about DNFing this, and the one thing that carried me through was Satchel. If you've read this book, then you know, the little guy that's connected to the necromancer. I absolutely fell in love with Satchel. Thought it was the greatest addition about halfway through the story to kind of propel the story forward. And the way that Satchel also aided in bringing the bookshop to life was just absolutely stunning. And the way that everything obviously wraps up in the end was also quite nice. I love that the Griffith had its own like little heroic moment at the end too. I absolutely loved it, but I overall was just okay with this story. It's interesting because my main qualm with this is that I don't really understand why Viv takes it upon herself to help Fern out so much, and the intent was never really clear to me. But then I do think that when speaking of intention and when speaking of motive for a character, I think towards the end it makes sense why Viv fights so hard to make sure that these characters have got their spot, have got their lives, have got their shops, have got their homes, because at that point she's developed an emotional connection to all of them. But prior to that, I can't really see why she's so invested. And so I think that was my main frustration with this book. Is it cute? Yes, but I still would say that it is somewhat subpar to Legends and Lattes, because the same amount of emotionality is not in this book as it was in the first one. So it's okay. This is why I don't read prequels typically, but I let myself be swayed because Legends and Lattes was so good. And so it was okay. I'm glad I read this. I think it was a cute, cozy time. The audiobook is really good. Would I recommend this as part of the series? I'd say maybe skip, but I think it's also dependent on whether we're gonna get Legends and Lattes too, and it's going to bring in Fern as part of the story now. I think the epilogue is what really did it for me here, because when thinking about the epilogue, I think about a Viv that is so certain now, obviously, with what she wants, which is attributed to Legends and Lattes, versus a Viv in this one who is very torn and often finds it difficult to sometimes make decisions and understand why she's making them, and still is kind of all over the place because she obviously wants to go on adventures and fight and be a mercenary and all these crazy things. And reality is, I don't know that I love that version of Viv as much as I like Legends and Lattes versions of Viv, and so it's okay. I think overall I would settle for a 3-star. Like, it is above average. The writing is consistent. It's good. I think I was just missing certain character development aspects to make me feel more for the characters and for the cozy element to feel cozy, because that's even another thing that I felt throughout the story, is that while I really enjoyed the bookshop element to this, I feel like at times it was missing from the story because we were focusing on other things and meandering a little bit too much. And so I think for me, my favorite aspects of this was when they were setting a little pop-up shop. It was so cute. They were doing blind dates with books and I loved it. It was so adorable. So there were moments like those where I was like, oh my god, this is so wholesome and cute and this is everything that I want. And then there were other times where I didn't feel that same level of coziness or excitement about this bookshop, you know, persisting and being revamped and all these things. So I think in that regard, it wasn't so consistent. So again, back and forth with everything, but I think a 3-star is good, just kind of middle of the road, but still a somewhat good time. And now, last but not least, the last thing we are going to be reading for this finishing series vlog is going to be A Prayer for the Crowned Shy by Becky Chambers. This is the second installment in the Monk and Robot series. I don't think there's been a third book announced, so I do consider this much like Bookshops and Bonedust as catching up with a series and technically finishing it because it is all that's out right now. So let us go, let us start this. I have got sprints with my patrons, so let us go settle into the sprinting and get our cozies on and read. And it's also raining, so I feel like it's the perfect little vibe, and maybe we'll make a little cozy drink. If do I have coffee? I think I do. Maybe we can make a coffee. Did not hear it here first, but I really do love crying. I have not been able to stop crying since I finished this book. Like, what the heck, Becky Chambers? Like, there was simply no way I was going to stop like halfway through. To give you guys an update, there was just like simply no way that I could have done it. I read this, I finished this. It was even better than the first book. I love this story. Like, Monk and Robot is like so comforting, and it just feels like a warm hug, and I can't take it. Yeah! Who thought a robot asking a fucking human, what do humans need, would turn into this? Oh my god. So let me backtrack. In the series, we follow sibling Dex, who is quite tired of city life. They are exhausted and weighed down by it, and they don't know how to continue to navigate everyday life in the city with everything that comes with it, with socializing, with working, with society in general, with adhering to rules and not rules. And so sibling Dex decides to become a tea monk and grab a little ox bike and travel throughout different towns and areas in order to provide tea services to different people. And as they continue their travels, they end up meeting Moscap, a robot who has been tasked with first contact with humans. A long time ago, robots gained consciousness. They decided to lay down their tools and basically separate themselves completely from humankind and go off into the wilderness to never be seen again. And this specific event was honestly the kindest, most optimistic look into what this would look like. Humans said, you know what, if you want to go, be free to go. We'll never make contact unless you initiate it, and Moscap is the one tasked to do that. And so when Moscap and sibling Dex meet, they start on this journey for Moscap to attempt to figure out exactly what it is that humans need at this point in time. And it continuously raises this question of, can that question even be answered? What do humans need? And I love how that's kind of put into question throughout the entirety of the second installment. People have different answers. Some people reply in terms of, I need to fix this, or I need to acquire this. Other people go the more philosophical route, but there's never really any consensus. It gets more complicated the more that Moscap and sibling Dex go around different towns and to different places and talk to different people, because is there really a consensus to this? I would say no. And I really love all of those nuances as part of the story. I love how Moscap, despite being an object, is so incredibly profound. I have found that I really love stories where there is a semblance of a robot, or a robot that has this childlike curiosity and that wants to discover the world for all it has to offer, and who maybe views world a lot more simplistically and yet profoundly than your average person. And I think that really does encompass how Moscap views it all. While there are things that Moscap really simplifies because it doesn't think that it's that complicated, there are definitely things that it overcomplicates because it doesn't think that it's that simple. And yet that curiosity to learn about everything and know everything because it wants to continue to connect with people and with Earth and with the world in general is so freaking beautiful. Like, I just freaking love it. And sibling Dex is a character who is completely overwhelmed with city life, which I think all of us have experienced at some point, with needing to take a break and disconnect from everything and just take a fucking breath. Is also a breath of fresh air. Seeing a character who understands that they don't understand it all and that they haven't seen it all, and that's part of the motivation as to why they leave in the first place, because they've never seen proper insects or animals or even a proper beautiful ancient tree. They haven't breathed fresh air. I really do love the profoundness of the story, and I love this one specific moment in this book with Dex's dad. Oh my god, that shit broke my soul, but in like the best ways possible. Like, it's so wholesome. It feels like a warm hug, and I think in turn it also is like so I don't know, I don't want to say the word sad, but it does. Like, it's so moving, and I really do adore every single second of that. I can't remember the last time I cried this hard with something, honestly. I'd say this is even better than the first one, honestly. I think seeing, again, that level of wonderment that Moscap has with everything and interacting with different people, and just the reverence, I think, that Moscap has for the world and nature and everything in it as something that is inherently special and unique, and that just deserves to exist without any pretext or explanation or anything in the middle of it. It's just so wonderful. And then sibling Dex too, like, oh my god, I can keep going and going. There was this one moment, that's the part that really just did me the fuck in, because there was this one moment where sibling Dex was talking about how they encourage people to take breaks and to take breathers and to just fully enjoy life without having to earn anything. anything, because just being able to do so should be a basic right that everybody has, and yet they find it so immensely difficult to do it themselves because they feel like they have to earn it. And I think it's that almost like self-punishment due to being a perfectionist, due to being so high achieving, and then not wanting to worry everybody about you. I think that's so not only like deeply relatable, but the way that the book goes about it is just so good. I love this. For sure, 5-star. I can't wait to see what else Becky Chambers has in store in this specific series. I hope there's like 20 different books in this. Watch me say that and then not actually read it if it's got like 20 more. But I do want there to be more of this because it is truly one of the most amazing things I have read as of late. Like, it's just so good. So 5 stars to A Prayer for the Crown Shy. But we have reached the end of this installment, episode 2 of finishing series I'm in the middle of, and we are 4 series down. Obviously, I don't have the T-Dragon series physically, though I do want to buy it because I do want it on my shelves, but 4 series down, and I think we did get to 50 series. I have been moving around my series master list because there were series that I decided in the middle of this that I did not want to continue. So let's look at it real quick. Friends, we have officially made it to 50 series. I really like that because if we keep on going with 4 series at a time, I think we're gonna make good progress. And there are still series in here that are either graphic novels or manga that I think as we continue to make these installments would be really great to include so that I can either catch up or finish them all together and really bring my number down. But we made it to 50, which honestly feels like amazing progress. And I want to hear from you guys. What series do you think I should be prioritizing? If there's anything that you're like, Mel, I want in the vlogs. I mean, you're probably gonna see a lot of these in the finishing series vlogs, but I would love to know if there's anything that you're like, Mel, you need to prioritize it. You need to really read it soon because it's amazing. Let a girl know all of that in the comments, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this, of course. And if you reach the very end of the video, let us leave a, have we done a robot emoji? I feel like we have. If we haven't, and if we have even, let's leave a robot emoji down in the comments or a chess piece. We have chess pieces, right, as emojis? One of the two would work amazingly down in the comments if you reach the very end. And let a girl know, what series are you currently reading? Have you finished any series recently? I'd love to know all of that in the comments section. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already for more content like this. And as always, if you'd like to support the channel further, it is a great help towards keeping this thing running smoothly, getting expensive equipment and the likes. Patreon is always linked down below. You get a bunch of things in return, so it's not just supporting the channel to support it. You're going to get tons of live shows back, a Discord server, book clubs, book updates, buddy reads, just all of the things that you could potentially imagine. It is a hoot and a riot. It is always a great time over on the Citadel, so that is always linked down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you on my next one.
Goodbye!